The dispute here is as follows, or rather some controversial statements are like, a kind teacher cannot teach effectively, and true excellence of a skill is reached through harsh drill, when the coach, the teacher is unforgiving and sometimes even brutal with the student, with the learner, to ensure success at a cost of some loss of, some sacrifices to be made, let's say, and this toil and moil, hard work to reach some goals. And I want to say here that there is this concept I picked up, learned about in a book about business, about how to scale up your business, the law or the principle of polarities, that we don't have like good or bad things in this world. Often we have polar things like chaos and order, like creativity and bureaucracy. We have let me remember. So, well, these two I think are enough to demonstrate what I mean. So let's say you have a startup and you have 5-10 people, and for you what's important is to be creative, to come up with ideas, to have quick communication between the workers, and you don't want to stifle them with bureaucracy, with red tape and endless meetings, so you will probably expect them to be a bit chaotic but very productive. And as your company grows and reaches the number of, let's say, 50 or 100 workers, well, you have to have a hierarchy, you have to have a system, because if you don't have such organizational structure, you probably will fall prey to entropy, to chaotic energies inside your company, and people will not know what they are supposed to be doing, who they are supposed to communicate with, and so on and so forth. So at some point you will have to establish some regulations, you will have to add structure and maybe a bit of bureaucracy. And the point there was to adapt, move your look at where you are and adjust according to this polarity system. And yeah, so kindness and brutality are, I think, in the same within the same scope, within the same limits. You cannot say that kindness or harshness are inherently bad or good things. They have to be situationally applied, first of all. Secondly, I think here we should bring up the question of parenting, so how we raise children. And my experience with some psychological lectures helped me understand this quite a simple idea. So a child is born with a certain set of predispositions, predilections and tendencies. And well, it is claimed that a parent's task is to look intensely at the new person, understand who this person is, and help unfold, help develop, nothing more, nothing less. So a parent must not impose his or her own will, aspirations, or imagine that his or her child is somebody who this child is not, which is very difficult. And then teachers should kind of take their relay button, no, not a button, damn it. What is this? baton. Yeah, baton is relay baton. You know, this stick when people run and give it to each other. So, or rather, educators should just join this race together with parents, ensuring that the child, the teenager, is truly developed in a way that this teenager requires. And that's the second thing. So the third thing is we have a concept of teachers we think are too tolerant, too kind, and we normally, okay, some people don't respect them, like children don't follow the orders and misbehave, and we have too harsh teachers who people are afraid of, and the KPI results also are, well, unimpressive. So being a slightly dramatic person, I am a dramatic person, a kind of poet of tragedy, I call myself. I would say the task of a teacher, the task of an educator is to make a very well calculated blow so as not to harm, but teach a lesson. Because the tragic goal, the tragic purpose of parents, or kind of tragic, is to prepare the child for the world, which is at points unforgiving and harsh and ruthless. And if you don't do your job well as a parent, well, chances are high the world will do your job, and in a very, very visceral manner, and will mutilate the child. And so you have to be very adequate with that, very, very aware of that. You cannot be too kind because the world won't be, and you cannot be too harsh because, well, the child is not that fortified to stand against you, and you have a chance to break the person in front of you. It's like a free therapy session. Very interesting. Well, thank you very much. I do hope it makes sense. So you see, and why I call this tragic, because at points you will, well, first of all, you will miscalculate and damage probably, which, well, we're all humans, we make mistakes. But even without miscalculation, let's say you're a very balanced parent, still you will have to be rough at points because you don't want your child to be hurt. So you will have to hurt the child yourself, kind of prohibiting something or, well, I mean, you say you cannot just suddenly start doing that. It has to be a philosophy from the very early ages. And if you do everything correctly, I think it can be very mild. If you explain why the fifth toy shouldn't be bought, why like, no, you can't go to that drug party and have a full week of blasting fun because it's better to study. Like, if a child, I think, is explained at every point why it is so, probably there is a way to avoid this kind of hurt. But I'm not a parent, I don't know. I cannot claim that I know the answers here. But as an educator, I can, well, say that there are a lot of parallels. And so an educator must imagine what are the limits for this person. Should we say discipline? Yes, discipline is another word we can remember here. It's just, again, I'm trying to describe everything in a more poetic way, but yeah, discipline is actually one of the words I like. So emotional discipline or discipline here, but discipline, has this kind of unpleasant connotation for many people, and I'm trying to reframe also. But discipline, I think, is inherently a great thing. So to develop, cultivate discipline in people, in learners, helps them a lot in the long run. And I do try to develop this discipline in my students as well. I want to know that they don't need me to be successful, that they understand why I'm trying to explain that, and they will keep up the spirit independently from me. But let's not get ahead. wanted to say that there are a lot of parallels. I mentioned before that my calibration stage is very often long. So when I have a new student or when I get a person who we haven't met for a long time with, I usually spend 2-3 months just understanding how they live, how much they work, what their life is about, because I want to understand how much English can enter their life to reach the targets they put in front of themselves, and what kind of expectations I can have, so that when we start actually working on those targets, I will be able to say like, hey, over like last 2 weeks there has been some slacking. What happened? Because I'm not receiving the same feedback, or I've noticed some kind of some kind of a decay, or like more mistakes in your speech. Why is this happening? And there could be an explanation, or there could be no explanation, and then I can just say, okay, so are we still true to our goal? And there I show my kind of, not tough love. Well, I mean, usually I'm being gentle and respectful. I'm just saying, well, like, I have expectations. We have expectations, that is, and that we have an agreement and we have to work. So, like, please think whether the goals are still true and whether you still want to achieve them. And usually it helps a lot. So it's kind of a showdown that I have with some of my students from time to time. It helps a lot. People react positively to that because, well, we are being honest with each other, because we understand why we do that, and they see that I'm not letting them slack, and at the same time I'm respecting that they have their own life. I think so. I don't want to pretend I know how they should live or work or study, because I don't. And I don't think, like the same situation with a parent cannot live a life for the child, only can give some kind of navigation. And that's how I see it. So the point is that I guess tough love, discipline are necessary in education, but have to be highly adjustable, flexible, always checked. So it has to be always checked whether the amount of pressure, the amount of effort, the amount of pressure is adequate, and maybe it has to be lowered or increased to keep up performance levels, to keep up with the KPI. I'm trying to remember if I have said everything I wanted here. Well, I guess so. Maybe you have some thoughts, but while you're thinking, I just want to finalize again, saying that, well, an example. So a person comes to the lesson, and let's say this learner is talking about his or her day, some news for 20 minutes straight out of 60 we have, and at some point I can, well, so what options do I have? I can just continue like that. I can just keep listening. So I'll just literally be listening to this person for 60 minutes. The second option is I can say, well, look, I can interrupt and say like, well, I'm very sorry for interrupting, but we agreed that today we would be, well, doing these tasks. So are you sure? Like I appreciate your story and I would love to continue, but we also have we have a task to do. And usually people say, yeah, of course, like they say, sure, like what I'm talking about is well, nice, but you're right, we have to do this. And so we switch to exercising. And then if we have time, we can come back to those topics we dropped. And the third way is I can not give a person a chance to speak from the beginning and say, okay, we have a program, we have a plan for today, so we are going to do this, let's begin. Where I kinda ignore what the person came with. And that means mood, the vicissitudes of the day, you know, the ups, the downs that a person maybe wants to tell about. And I prefer to stick with the second way, because the first one betrays weakness on the side of the teacher, or I mean, often, like I'm too afraid to interrupt, but that means that. So just talking doesn't improve the language level. And the third way is kind of neglecting the person's inner world, which I also am very afraid of. I would love to be staying in the loop, you know, to stay current, to know what the person is concerned with, what has been happening with him or her, because I want to be contextualized. I want to give the most calibrated, the most possibly related tasks to the person, and adjust the program, adjust our conversations in a way that the lessons are about exactly him or exactly about her. And I want to know that I work with a person in front of me, that I don't exercise my power as a teacher, that I have a plan that will fit anyone, anywhere, anytime. I don't think this plan exists. I don't think it has ever existed. I don't think any ultimate thing exists in the world, and you probably know that everything has to be adjustable, everything has to be flexible, and I try to be balanced. So sometimes I would listen to 50 minutes of this speech, and we will work for 10. Sometimes we will talk for 10 minutes and work for 50, and it's ever changing, and well, has been working well. So something like that.